Hey, hey, it's Ben Wheeler here with Anthony, and we're going to be talking about probably one of our favorite shows of all time, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What a ride. Tell me, Anthony, do I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure more than you?
I would say you probably do. I greatly enjoy JoJo, but I do qualify it to people where I will say legitimately it isn't for everyone. Uh,
Anthony, the appropriate response would have been, "No, I'll fight you." But it's okay. This is also acceptable. Um,
honestly, I really like JoJo. I don't think it's perfect, but it's so startlingly unique. How about that?
that it is.
There is nothing, absolutely nothing that I can think of that even comes close to the style and tone of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Right? It's such a joy. I'm so happy to have seen it. Admittedly, I'm a bigger fan of the manga than I am of the anime. I think David Production does a good job, but honestly, all JoJo is going to have to look like season 1 did, as good as season 1 did, which was masterpiece. Uh and it's just never really hit those heights.
I would say David Production, and I've noticed people say this too, they deserve a lot of credit for really it looks to me at least like they really appreciate the source material. Like they're
Yep.
putting their A game, they're putting their A effort into the show. They're going that extra mile. I've seen some people, I've looked at some videos on YouTube and whatever, because that's what I do because I'm crazy about JoJo's. And what I've seen with it is that there are several people who are saying that season five, the anime, in several ways has improved upon the manga. Specifically, they were talking about the Assassin Squad. They said
Mhm.
that the anime gave them a lot more characterization and they felt a lot more real in the anime.
That
And
they
there were
did.
just, they mentioned like there were small details that David Productions was putting into their adaptation that showed that they really cared about what they were doing. Like the 7-page Muda scene. Somebody mentioned like if you actually counted out the Mudas in that scene, it is the exact same number that is used in the manga. And not only that, the number of scene transitions is the same as the number of pages.
I mean, the best part of it so far for me is set part 5 anyway, is what they did with the assassination squad. Instead of having a bunch of stuff mysterious, which is what Araki did in the manga, which based on how it was being presented and the fact that it was unknown, it worked out. But you know nobody really like the thing about like adapting information, I'm sorry, adapting like manga to anime or whatever, everyone who wants to watch it already knows the story. So doing a one for one doesn't really work. You want to grow it out a bit, just a little bit to tickle them, you know, and give them that good
Right.
feeling. And they did it just right. Like that one scene where the Squadra, the assassination, is like at the funeral home for their killed two companions, and they, like Risotto, the leader, like just sits there the entire time as people go in and out, and it's like, oh, that feels good. And then they have a little bit of infighting between the various, the squadra and the rest of the mob, and it's like, oh yeah. um Another scene I think they did incredibly well is the fortune teller scene.
Oh yeah, that was a good scene.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, they handled Doppio Diavolo as a very tricky character to handle, and we're just gonna spoil everything, right? Just to
Oh
name
yeah,
it
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Like we're
Like,
we're not
yeah,
even gonna bother with spoilers, correct?
that's right. It's one of those things where it's like it's out there and it's been out there for more than a decade.
I'm only gonna say I'm gonna ask for one thing. Don't tell me exactly how part five ends. I know that Giorno becomes the mob boss. I know that Bucciarati dies, and I know that I think it was Narantia. Narantia dies. but I don't know anything else about it, and I really am interested in seeing what happens in the show. So that's my one request.
So that's a pity because it's like I really do want to hear your take on the ending of part 5.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I've heard a lot of mixed thoughts on it, but I want to make my own conclusion because here's the thing, like part 5, the anime adaptation has gotten a lot of praise, a lot of praise. Like I said, some people saying that it has built upon the source material, if not exactly improved. I think they've done a terrific job handling the Diavolo Doppio
Mhm.
dichotomy because that's something that could so easily come off as contrived or stupid, but they
Yep.
played it in a really sinister, mysterious way that perfect.
Mhm.
Perfect. The reveal, the Diavolo reveal, I had figured it out like pretty much when we met Doppio. I knew what was going on, but
Like
the
how
way
many
that
guys
they did,
have pink hair?
I mean, it was that and the fact that he was always talking to someone in his head. It was like, oh, so it's, it's a split personality. Okay. But the way
Mhm.
that they did the reveal was perfect. How they stuck it mid episode, which is exactly right because it's not the most important reveal of the episode because it was set up, I think, personally, telegraphed so obviously. But then they end the episode with the much bigger reveal, which is that Silver Chariot Requiem has arrived and taken the arrow from Diavolo. And
Mhm.
that's another thing I want to give David Productions a lot of credit for is that their pacing, man, dead on.
Ah,
Every
really?
I think so. The
I
end of
mm.
every episode, in my opinion anyway, I think that the end of every episode they always pick the right hype moment to end it. Like last episode was more or less an exposition episode, but then they end it with that shot of Bucciarati as Diavolo getting the arrow from Silver Chariot Requiem, and that immediately shot the hype factor right back up. All of a sudden, I was hit. It hit with full impact for me. I'm like, oh man, Bucciarati's still alive. And I think
Mhm.
it it was really really well done. And there's been some complaining about part 5 too, and I understand to a point. I had a long theory about that I want to get in more detail before I explain in full, but uh, honestly, I have really loved it. I think it's fantastic. I probably like it a little bit more than part 3. I don't know.
Mm.
Part 4 has some highs and has some slow parts, but when part 4 is good, it is absolutely brilliant, and it can be kind of slow.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of it's going to depend on how much I like the ending. If I absolutely hate it, then yeah, part 5 is going to drop. But even if it's just good, I'm going to still hold it in high esteem.
Well, a lot of things, like a part of the problem with Jojolian is that we don't know what the end game is. And Araki's playing his cards really close to his chest, frustratingly close, in fact. So, you know, so we don't really know who the final villain is, even though it's suspected to be Joshua's mother. We don't really know what the end game is besides lots of money and the Rokaka fruit. There's so many things up in the air. And if you compare it to we got to kill the boss or we got to protect the boss's daughter in part 5, um, even part 6, which is really vague, it's like there's some weird stuff going down in this prison, and
Well,
Jotaro lost his stand and his memories, and you got to
you
get
know
it
what
back.
though? Part 6 had a very clear goal, which is escape the prison, get back Jotaro's memories.
Well, sort of. It didn't start out that way, but it sort of got there, is what I'm trying to say. Like they actually had one or two stand battles before it got there. Um,
Ah, okay.
and that's just what
Uh,
I'm talking about. But then, like as went on, like it became clearer, and there was always somebody there who was clearly the main motivator of the plot, Poochie.
yeah,
Which part 8
Dio's
lacks.
henchman, right?
Yeah, like he's basically his best friend. There's a lot of the gay shipping with those two. But the thing is that if there was sexual tension between the two of them, the plan wouldn't work because it requires somebody who's not sexually interested in the main character. It's a plot point, but it's like whatever. The fangirls will have their way. Um, as despicable as that is.
Yeah, I've looked up a little bit of Jojolian and how the plot goes. Like, I check in with Wikipedia just because, honestly, I'm not so much sure that I want to read it yet, but I am just want to go, like, seriously, what the hell is this? And I think that
Hmm.
right now, Iraqi is finally starting to peel back the layers very slowly, but he's doing it. Like, they've revealed some more information about Josuke too.
Well,
Gappy,
no,
right?
that's
Isn't
been a
that
thing
the
for
nickname?
for a while. Yeah, Josuke 4. I mean 8. That's what people usually say. Well, the thing is though, it's been a very long time since they revealed that. Like we're talking years. As weird as that is to say. Um,
Well, because it's only releasing one chapter a month, right?
yeah, and like and it's frustrating because sometimes he takes breaks and like he talks and interact
He's an
like
old
adds
man.
people in. What?
He's an old man.
He looks perfect in every way. Um, no,
He
I don't know.
does too. That's not even a joke.
That's not even a joke. He's like Keanu Reeves, but I understand that some people make that argument, but then I also think of like the Berserk guy who basically wastes his time playing an idle game, uh, according to rumor anyway. Um,
Ha, that's hilarious.
and it's like guys, like you do have a responsibility, a duty to produce these works of art,
Then
because
you get
it's
machine men like Miyazaki who is healthier than teenagers and in his 80s and
yeah,
smokes like a chimney.
yeah,
But he eats meticulously healthy and runs like 3 miles a day every day.
right. And I'm just starting to get like exercising while I'm at work. Like it's it takes a dedication. But then again, working out for that Jojo bod is more than a mean.
Exactly. But
Though hmm?
go ahead. You can
We're
go first.
expecting the latest chapter of Jojolian soon. By the way, it's been a month since the last one, so hopefully
I
the
mean,
translators will be on it.
from what I've seen, none of the JoJos have gotten bad reviews. Not even Phantom Blood got bad reviews, and JoJolian is no exception. JoJolian, I've seen some people express that they don't think it's as good as others, but the reviews are by no means bad. They're
Yeah,
mostly in the 8 of 10 range if you average them out from what Google tells me.
Well, I saw a
I
site
mean,
that ranked the first four JoJo's. They got either eights or sevens.
That's my brother in the background. I don't know how much you could hear him.
we
Yeah.
um,
He says that the first 4 sections of JoJo's tended to rank somewhere between 7 and 8.
The review said I read they reviewed the first four parts. Each part got either a seven or an eight.
Yeah, that's
So yeah, it's pretty consistent.
so even Joe Jolian for some of the crap it gets from the fandom now. Uh, for some of the crap that Joe Jolian gets from the fandom now, I will specify that as far as critical reception goes, it's actually still pretty good.
oh yeah, like
No, it's
it's good in a way, but I don't appreciate it. Like I do like battle tendency or part 6. Like to me, part 6 and 7 was the perfect amount of complexity uh to the otherwise simple like JoJo find the bad guy, beat up the bad guy formula. Like both Part 6 and Part 7 benefited from having a strong, obvious antagonist from the beginning. So, um,
That's true.
like you have let's just take Seal Ball Run. You have President Funny Valentine. He's literally in the background of the first couple chapters. He has like all these different henchmen, and it's obvious he's up to something. He doesn't do anything for quite some time. Um, like I think it's a good like past like there's some agents of his who get defeated, whatever. But then like he doesn't really take real effect in the plot until he subverts one of the other racers to fight, who's like a hero type, to fight the main villains, because he knows exactly what that guy wants, as well as sort of like what he can tempt him with. And it's a pretty amazing fight. Uh, what's the other thing? Oh, and in Part 6, even though Poochie has like henchmen that come and go, and there's some that even last longer, and one that almost defeats him to become the main villain. Um, he still has enough of a threat and enough like quote unquote good fortune, that keeps the fights very interesting, even when like heavyweights like Jotaro Kujo join the fight.
I mean, my sister got a book by Araki,
Yeah.
and the book's pretty interesting. It's about Araki, it's like a how to make manga book, and Araki goes into his writing style and all of that fun stuff. But one of the more interesting things about the book was that you realize something. Araki, how about I put it this way? Araki is probably the most influential living manga writer outside of who's Dragon Ball? Akira Toriyama?
Yeah.
Toriyama. He's probably the most influential living manga writer outside of Akira Toriyama, because Stans influenced everything, like everything. It completely changed the shonen landscape. They mentioned like everything from My Hero Academia quirks to the Hunter x Hunter Nen system. It's all connected to the Stans.
And
like it all started with that.
Exactly. It's like
what was that in the background, by the way? Gotta ask.
A.M. Freeman has joined the chat.
That was me entering Aura style.
Oh, hello.
I just threw out a general invitation for anyone who loves JoJo.
He just said anyone that loves JoJo. I've never actually watched it. I've only seen like random clips or listened to the music or like intros or like strike some JoJo poses occasionally. But
man, we're like deep diving into it.
Typical thought behavior.
I won't. I probably won't be able to be on for long. Quite busy, but I figured I'd jump on, at least say hi and I thought of that entrance, and I was like, well, now I got to do that entrance, so here I am.
Someone makes an ara comment, and I go, Moro ni-chan, then ara. There we go. No, your husband likes JoJo. Does he?
I don't think he's seen it either. Yeah, he does. Like, we both just like memeing on it. He doesn't. I don't know if he's watched any of it or not.
I could have sworn.
I think
Jaji asked us about JoJo.
She asked him, and then he had to be like, "No, I don't really know."
Oh, okay.
I know Jaji mentioned that. Go ahead.
Because she asked me to ask him, and I was like, I'm not sure if he's actually seen it, but passed it along. And then he was like, yeah, no, I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah, Jaji mentioned that some of the right household had seen it, but they didn't all watch it together because of the language and some of the sexual innuendo of JoJo. Which, by the way,
sexual innuendo in JoJo?
That's probably my least favorite part of Part 3, by the way. He uses a lot of bathroom humor and a lot of weird... He gets into more of the weirder jokes.
Oh yeah, there
I
is that
do
one thing
like.
where Joseph looks on Lisa, who is
Well,
then
that's part
revealed
2.
to who to be his mother. It's like and he's
Yeah,
like
that
thinking
was
about it.
part
He's like,
2.
oh no.
I
But
do
part
like
Uh,
the
3
one
had
where
the
he's walking down like a school campus and all the girls are like
Yes.
arguing and bickering over him and it just turns around and says, "Shut up!" And then they all swoon and fall down.
it's like a running gag in every JoJo that all of the girls like fawn over all of the JoJos, and all of the JoJos just do not give a crap.
See,
Like, even
Goblin Slayer is
Josuke,
like that,
who's
except see, Goblin Slayer is like that, except not only he doesn't just give a crap, he just doesn't even know that that affection exists. He's just there, and then
That's
all
a
the pennies
mental
drop.
disorder. That's different.
in JoJo, it actually kind of turns into a gag eventually, because it's the same with every single JoJo. When you get to Josuke, who's probably the least overtly masculine of the JoJos, out until of course Giorno's a fashion model, but whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, Josuke is the least overtly masculine in the sense that he's not, he's a typical teenager, and he's even a little bit of a slacker.
I don't
Like,
know.
he's
Like
always
if
going for get rich quick schemes and whatever. But even Josuke, girls are like fawning over him, and Josuke just kind of shrugs it off.
Yeah, but he's far less aggressive than Jotaro, who will with a completely straight face insult his mother, but then of course he'll travel across the world like to beat up that sparkling vampire with time powers, who's causing her to her own stand to attack her. So he really cares on the inside. Um,
That's
I don't,
Japan did sparkling vampires before Twilight.
woot
and it
woot.
was actually menacing. Uh, there
Of
is,
I
course,
mean,
he
they are
died in the
also like
sunlight,
super
so
muscled, aren't they?
oh
Like
yeah, at
they
least in that
actually have
generation.
powers instead of just going fast. They actually have powers.
Gotta go
it's a
fast.
pretty interesting shift in a.
No, don't you bring that cursed image in here. That gotta go fast, Sonic. We shall not speak
Oh,
of it. Sorry, I was triggered there. Triggered.
So there's this really funny comic where like there's this famous scene in part 3 where Polnareff is confronting Dio, and Dio's like, "Well, if you want to fight me, come up these stairs." And
Oh
Polnareff,
yeah.
takes a few steps up. All of a sudden, he's all the way back down. And Dio's like, "What? What's wrong? Come up the stairs to fight me, Polnareff." And it's like he says it almost exactly the same way I'm saying it now. And it goes on, except what it does is you don't know what's going on because they haven't revealed Dio's powers yet. So it shows the comic of Dio stopping time, which is his ability, and then running down the stairs as fast as he can, picking up Polnareff, putting him back down at the bottom of the stairs, like running back up and then slicking back his hair and adopting the pose again, because that is the appropriate way to abuse your time travel mechanics.
Oh, you
Um,
should have seen our Supers game. You want to talk about abusing time travel? It's the RPG game with super. It's playing with the rights. John and Just, mostly Just ended up being like, I don't know. He kept like we would get out of situations by just being like, okay, I'm gonna have my future self come do this. And the time dragon got real tired of our crap real quick, but it was great.
so there's this I'm a big fan of Homestuck, and there's these like AUs and alternate stuff, and someone wrote like a PK guide to Homestuck because it's like kids trapped in the game, so player killers, and this guy's like, yeah, you know what the most annoying fight I ever had? There's this guy, and he would just send future clones of himself against me forever, like it was some sort of Japanese RPG. And he describes like how he had to like fight through a Japanese RPG's worth of versions of this guy until he got to kill the main one. And he says it was very satisfying indeed after all
Wow.
that trouble.
I
But
would
that's
think so.
the real abuse of time travel powers right there.
That one's just like very spiteful time travel.
Right.
Like,
Araki has a whole thing. Whenever he wants to make his stands get more and more creative as the story goes on, but he does have one quirk that is still the case. whenever he wants to make a power particularly OP, always, every single time, it's actually a little bit comical at this point. It involves time travel somehow.
Yep.
Especially Kira's was the most insane. I am still not quite sure how Bites the Dust works. I've
Okay.
had
Okay. Hold
long
on.
conversations about it.
It's really simple. I assure you, it's simple and it's complex and it's
I've
designed
created this diagram. Now
right.
we're gonna pick Hayato at the center. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Hayato is the center. Basically, Kira puts a proximity mine on Hayato that activates anytime it's revealed who Kira is. That proximity mine has the power to reverse time to a certain point in origin, such that it's as if it never happened, but the effects of the explosion remains.
Well,
Hayato is the only person aware of this, by the way.
all right. Here is where Bites the Dust kind of tripped me up. Actually, here are the couple of places. So now we're going to go off on a tangent about this because this really did seriously. I was just kind of rolling with it eventually. Where Bites the Dust tripped me up is first off. So to be clear, the only reason that Jotaro, Josuke, and Rohan and Koichi all survived is because Kira was flexing and just wanted to torture Hayato a little bit more, right?
Basically, yeah. He like it's a very famous it's scene too that I think the anime kind of ruined. He basically flings himself back and screams to the sky, "Luck has sided with Yoshikage Kira!" And then the hero hears it and is able to, put it all together. Um
Oh yeah, the anime didn't do. I mean, they had that part of it, but that's the second. That is the second question that I had. So they figure out
mhm,
that Kira is, or that guy, whatever his secret identity was, that he's actually Kira, right? And they figure it out because he says it and not Hayato. How does
mhm.
this break Bites the Dust? That's what I'm confused about.
So it's pretty simple. The bomb is connected to Hayato, not Kira.
Right, I got that part, but
So in other words, Kira himself reveals it, and it doesn't activate Bites to the Dust because why would it activate on its own master?
yeah, but the bomb doesn't kill Hayato. It kills Josuke. Like there was a point
No,
where
you're right. But the thing
Rohan was
is,
exploding, even though Hayato hadn't even gone up to him because they
right,
said like, "Oh, you did it last time." That's why it
yeah.
was.
But I mentioned that earlier that the bomb effect continues on after the fact. Like
So
it's a set point in time space that Rohan, Kishibe, etc. will explode at 8:30:31.
okay, because that's the other thing with Hayato. Again, like all he had to do after everyone died was
Yeah.
release Bites the Dust, right?
Right. So in other words,
But he was just flexing at that point. He was just like, "Look
yeah,
how awesome I am! I'm gonna make you do it again."
yeah, and it's like if he like so if Kira had been on his game and be willing to like take a few blows, he probably could have won it just by enduring Josuke, like just by running from Josuke.
I mean, the other thing is that Kira is extremely powerful at the end of the anime. He has like 4 stands going for him at once with Stray Cat.
Yeah. Well,
So he
yeah.
has those exploding bubbles that he's shooting at Josuke with Stray Cat. I really, really appreciated that fight because
Oh yeah.
Jotaro versus the World was a great fight scene, lived up to the hype. However, I did have a problem that it pretty much bullshitted the Star Platinum ability to give Jotaro a chance.
Yeah.
Uh, it wasn't the worst thing in the world because Jotaro was still super underpowered compared to Dio, but it was also like that was clearly not an ability of Star Platinum. Araki just added it. He
Yeah, and
just
it's
stuck it there to give him a chance. But
but
I
to
thought
me
that
it
the Kira fight was a lot more clever in that it stuck to all of the established rules in the series. It used the powers in clever ways. How Josuke figured out that it was the picture of his father that was telling him where he was located, that he uses it
Hmm.
to trick him into moving the bubble out of the way, that he uses a piece of dried blood as a weapon to keep flying back into Kira.
Yep.
It was all very cleverly done.
It is, and it's like, to me, I felt I wasn't bothered in the slightest by Jotaro gaining the power of the world, and there's several reasons for it.
I didn't
First,
hate it.
right. For like, sure, if you say by strict rules, it's BS. But the thing is, it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you're going to be like, these are the rules, it's going to go, hold up a second. Did you not see the sign? And it's like, the sign says that there are no rules, and the second sign says Araki forgets. So
Yeah,
like, there's a
Araki is pretty notorious. He's pretty notorious. I love Araki, but he's not perfect.
no. So basically, the reason why like people don't like freak out about it is that, one, bloodline. Anyone who's been reading since part one or like has read part one knows that Dio has hijacked Jonathan's body, who is the progenitor of all the heroic generations of JoJo. Um, and so, there's that bloodline connection. There's the fact that it was Jonathan's body that was pierced by an arrow. Um, and that Jotaro's fighting spirit is the same, or fighting soul is the same as Dio's own.
Uh, I mean, look, there was enough there. I thought it worked too because, first off, it was a very, very well done fight.
Oh
He
yeah,
established a rule during the fight, but to be fair to Araki, once he established it, he did not break that rule. In fact, if anything, things just kept going more and more Dio's way as the fight went on.
yep,
And I think that that's another reason why it worked. Now, it was super bullshit the way they brought Joseph back, but at that point, I was
Eh.
just like, you know what? I like Joseph. Just let's roll with it.
I
I,
I wasn't bothered. Like, I thought about it for a while, and I decided that, you know what, this isn't the craziest thing to happen. This is fine. Sitting there and everything's on fire. This is fine. Um,
I mean,
I was
Especially
just
since
like,
it,
Araki
you
takes
know
back
what?
all
I
the
like
time.
Joseph.
and if you believe that Jotaro punched all the blood out of Dio and all the blood that was in him was Joseph's blood originally, it all works out.
Now that's just
It's
weird.
you know
That
what
is
though?
not weird at all. In fact, it
It's
makes perfect sense.
bizarre.
Hold up, yeah, exactly. Ah, ah,
Okay.
I'm just gonna
yeah.
provide the outsider perspective here. That just sounds weird, but I'm
Anyway,
okay with it.
Oh, it
Lord.
is. Look, I jumped in later than Ben. Ben's been like a long time hardcore fan. It's
Oh yeah.
definitely weird, and I said earlier when it started that I would definitely qualify that I think it's fair to say JoJo's is not for everyone.
It
It
is.
has
JoJo is bizarre, right?
Well,
Yes,
Right.
like,
it
here's
has
the
its own has a very very unique style, and that is a point in its favor. But it's also just some people it's not going to resonate with, and that's fine.
I mean, that's
But with
fine,
that
but
said, yeah,
Well,
I
we
thought
need
bringing
a crossover. We need the ultimate crossover of the sparkly vampires, where we throw Twilight characters into the JoJo universe.
I
eh,
don't know some kind of crossover that they're going
I
on.
don't
I don't
know.
know. They
I
they
feel
they-
like
they've got
that
the
would not
bods.
go very well.
They've
For
got the
them, anyway.
bodies for it.
Yeah, I
But
don't think it would be that entertaining. I think Dio would just wreck everyone and make them his slaves or
Mm.
kill them.
yeah,
Probably make them
yeah.
his slaves. Dio likes doing that.
He's probably more. I don't know. Like, looking at Edward, I was like, I'm just gonna kill you there. Just gonna punch right through your midsection. The thing that bothers me about the anime is that the dub is almost good, like, all the time, but then they ruin the road roller scene just a bit. So at the ending of part three, there's this famous scene where Dio stops time for 9 seconds, the
Oh
longest
yeah,
time ever, and of course it takes 5 minutes. but whatever. Don't worry about it. And then
Oh,
he
the
pulls,
times don't even slightly match up. Like they're
right?
not even close.
And so like he goes into the city. He finds what's it called, a road roller, and smashes Jotaro with it. And there's this amazing scene where he pulls it down and like he's trying to do it, and Jotaro's like trying to push back with his stand. So he starts punching the road roller, and Dio, to make the road roller hit harder, he starts punching the other side of the road roller. And
Yeah, it's
he goes, road roller, da! And it's like, and then they start, having their battle cries as they punching the thing on both sides.
the Aura Muda battle
Yeah,
cry.
and it's absolutely amazing. It's one of the best paced scenes in the anime. But then the dub ruins it, and instead of shouting like road roller, it's like like anything else. He goes, "I'm gonna roll right over you, all over you."
Wow.
He should have said like, "I'm gonna roll right over you," or something like that. But he doesn't. They chose like the most awkward sentence,
I
and
did
it's
not
like it
watch the dub.
hurts.
I
Oh, it's
watched
good.
the sub for once because that's what's on Verve, and we free trial spam Verve. So I watched the sub of JoJo's for once, even though my sister tells me the dub is quite good.
Oh,
But
it is quite
the voice of Dio in the sub is actually fantastic. There's a scene in part one of JoJo. I think JoJo's about to fall on something in the Joestar Manor while it's on fire.
Yeah.
And Dio, the Japanese voice actor, says in English exactly like this: "Goodbye, JoJo." And
Oh,
it's
it's a great scene.
absolutely hilarious and brilliant.
Oh yeah,
The
I
voice
do
actor
love
for
the
Dio
English
he's
thrown
digging
in.
it. Yeah, the voice actor for Dio is clearly digging it.
a
They
treasure.
also have Joseph use it curses in English a lot. He says "holy shit" and "oh my god," and I pointed that out, and my sister goes, "Well, yeah, because Joseph's American, actually." And I
Yep.
thought about it, I'm like, "You're right, aren't you?" I'm like,
So
I
like all
guess
his
he is.
companions are like different nationalities. So he's like, okay, guys, two of you
They're
can speak
probably all
Japanese.
speaking English.
Yeah, but it's like two of you are Japanese, so we'll just speak Japanese. It's like, okay. But you're right. They're probably all speaking English. Uh,
Although I do like the idea that they all learned Arabic just because of Avdol.
I did like Abdal. He was a great character.
I've
Uh,
Avdol didn't make as much of an impression on me, but Polnareff I thought was very well realized.
well, like
And
so like the thing about Avdol versus Polnareff is that Avdol already has a character arc. Like his arc is him finding the courage to fight Dio
yeah,
after running in fear from him. Like Polnareff's arc was the revenge against his sister and then the
You're cutting
revenge
in and
against
out
Dio.
something.
That, honestly, he was kind of he was kind of, he had a whole bunch more that he wanted to do about it. You know what I mean? He had a fire in him greater than Avdol did.
uh, yeah. JD Cowan says you can't forget Iggy. Tell you what, the
Oh,
fight with Iggy and Pet Shop was first off probably one of like the three best fights of the entire show somehow. And second, redeemed that entire character for me because I hated Iggy. I thought he was annoying. I didn't get why he was there. And then they have that fight with Pet Shop, and the fight is so like
oh yeah,
non-ironically amazing.
yeah,
Like it, I'm not even like it's absurd because it's a dog fighting a bird, but
a hawk.
it's also like not even kidding, an incredible fight. The choreography, how they move around the whole time, it has this
Hmm.
epic scale. And then it gives Iggy this character arc where he decides he wants to get revenge on Dio and sacrifices himself to save Polnareff. And that's the one thing about part three that I mentioned I prefer so far, part five to part three overall, probably as of right now. But
What's that?
one thing about part three that I will say is that it nailed its ending. Like the
Oh
final
yeah.
three episodes or so. Honestly, I don't know if salvage the show is quite right, because I liked the show up to that point, but it
Hmm.
really left it with I left the show with a much better impression than I would have otherwise.
Like part three's ending was like, how do I want to put it? So they don't have as many strength to strength matches. Most of the matches are like fights and cleverness, like in duels fight, which is probably one of the best in JoJo Part Three until the poker scene, which is
The
absolutely
poker.
just amazing. Just an amazing fight. Um, like from like the poker scene to the end of Part Three is just amazing. But like there's few strength to strength fights, so they just basically went full strength to strength. Like I'm a full firm believer that like for the climax especially, you just want the craziest, most awesome thing that you can. Like if you do some sort of sci-fi noir, you want cleverness or whatever. But when it's time for the big breakout scene from the collapsing city or whatever, that's when you pull out like the super crazy weapons or whatever, and abilities, and just play them to their fullest T, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the part three, I think the ending of part three did so much well. Again, salvage seems like it's a little bit too far, because that implies that I didn't like part three, when that is not true at all. I
Right.
greatly enjoyed part three from beginning to end. However, it raised my impression of it a lot. And I will say, too, that it created it fulfilled these character arcs so perfectly for
Hmm.
people like Polnareff, Avdol, even Iggy, for Kakyoin, that they all have these arcs that are completed in a pitch perfect way.
Oh
That, by
yes.
the way, Araki really knows how to kill off characters.
Yes.
He kills off characters. He always does it right. Like, they never die needlessly. They never die with no purpose or no. I don't know exactly how to put it. Like, all the way back from Joseph's death, but even up to the latest
Jonathan's
death
death.
in the what
You mean
or
Jonathan's death? Not
Jonathan,
yeah.
yes, sorry, Jonathan's death, all the way up to what's latest in the anime right now. The most current death of a major character was Abachio. Uh, I really don't think he's ever misstepped killing off a character. I I
Yep.
have no problem with any of the times that he's done it. I think he did justice to the characters every time. And also, I think the fact that he always follows through, like if a character is dead, they stay dead. It really helped the Okuyasu scene where he shows up
Hmm.
again in part 4 really hit home,
Oh yeah. Like it's
because that the fact that Araki, that he had such a good reputation for sticking to his guns, like if a character's dead, they're dead type thing.
hmm.
That the fact that that when Okuyasu gets up, he can get away with it, because that it's not something that he'll normally pull, and that moment really, really hits hard.
Well, actually, there's been like a few of them who like have weird, like they survive sort of events. Joseph does it.
Well, Joseph,
Um,
yeah,
Stroheim did it. Um, I mean
that's a little
Stroheim.
bit different though. What I mean is, like with Okuyasu, we had a body, we had no breathing, and they verbally acknowledged that he was dead. That
They
is all.
literally blew Stroheim to bits. Like he was a
Yeah, but
fine
that's not
pink
the same
mist.
thing. That's a little
Okay,
bit
fine.
different. That's a little bit different. It's the fact, narratively, they verbally acknowledge Okuyasu is dead, and we have a body in front of us.
Yeah.
Like, the body is there, the heart's not beating, and they verbally acknowledge that Okuyasu is dead. These are
So
all of the hallmarks. Like, if you're gonna name somebody as definitively dead, that would be it. And it would have been a fine death, by the way.
yeah.
If Okuyasu had died there, it wouldn't have been a bad thing.
Well,
However,
I think it would have felt a
because
little bad.
well, I mean, I would have felt sad, but I wouldn't necessarily have thought that it was I wouldn't have thought that it was a bad death. How about that?
Okay, that's
But
reasonable.
I mean, no, I love Okuyasu. I was really glad that he woke up, but I don't think it would have ruined the story by any means.
Right.
So I think the fact that he does such a good job with establishing his depths and playing fair in that way, that when Okuyasu gets up, the moment really works.
Hmm. It's
Stroheim and Joseph were a little bit different because Joseph, we never see a body, and if you never see a body, then that
yeah,
means that means you aren't dead in the world of anime. And
that's true.
Stroheim was first off a more minor character, and second off, honestly, he almost existed in his own insane world. I love Stroheim. Uh, I think it's ballsy as hell that Stroheim is just an actual Nazi. Like not
Right.
like that. He's not some sort of fictional analog to Nazis. He's not just like he says German, but look at the time period. Stroheim is
Right.
just a Nazi, and he's a good guy,
Yeah,
but he's a
he's
Nazi.
a very enthusiastic, like what's it? Very enthusiastic about German science. Um,
Yes.
he's great. Um,
He was my favorite, probably my favorite character in part two. Though I love Joseph. If we're gonna rank
mhm.
the JoJos, Joseph is definitely my number one. That's one of my criticisms of part three is I wish that Joseph got a better solo battle than that one with the arm imp.
That's gonna happen though. Like in what was it?
It was a fine. By the
Like
way, I actually liked the episode because of the. I thought that the solution he came up with to win the battle was pretty clever.
yeah,
I'm glad we got to hear his catchphrase again, and it was just nice to have a solo Joseph episode in there. But I was like, this is Joseph. He's one of the JoJos. Like
yeah.
he really. I think he deserves a better battle than that thing that's just sitting on his arm.
Well, it was a battle of wits, and he also had like, even though he only had like one solo fight, he still did have fights with like Abdal,
Yeah, he has the magnet
against
battle with Abdal.
Maria, and
Yes.
she Bastet, I think her stand is, back when they were the
It
9
was the
Egypt glory
magnet
gods.
battle, and
Yeah,
it was very good.
and like that's kind of it, and also it's like you have 5 characters, 3 of which could arguably, and like 2 of them were like main character class people in with their own series. Polnareff, Joseph, and Jotaro. Jotaro and Joseph were the main characters of their own series,
Yes.
and show up in others. And Polnareff himself has enough force of will and character to easily handle that sort of thing. Um, some things just kind of have to be as they
I
are.
mean,
Like
yeah,
some
to
of
be
them,
fair, I am nitpicking that scene because I actually liked the episode quite a bit. You're right, it
hmm
was a battle of wits, and I actually think that the solution he came up with was pretty clever. It was clever enough at least for it to work. Like when he
hmm
did it, I was like, okay, I could buy that. It was really nice to hear Joseph say his catchphrase for the only time in part three,
yep.
which that annoyed me. But,
I
under the radar, that annoyed me. That was the only time he ever uses his catchphrase in part three. His personality changes a lot, and eh,
I don't know if it does, personally.
eh.
Personally, um,
He gets so grumpy. He's such like a fun-loving trickster in part two, and he's like a grump in part three. And then they show like as the story goes on, he has a softer side and he opens up.
yeah,
I also want to note how in that video game battle, I think it's hilarious that Jotaro is his grandson and he's terrible at video games, but Joseph is great at it. And he's what,
Ah,
like in his 60s at that point?
yep,
And Joseph is just totally into video games.
Does it take place in the future?
yep. Doesn't even phase him. He just like looks at it and he's like, yeah, okay. I'll control it with
That was
my.
You know what I noticed about that fight? It was the brother of the gambler, the
Yeah.
video game fight. And what I noticed is that one was way easier. they even lampshade it. Like, I think Joseph points out, he goes, yeah, the cheating that we did was really pretty easy.
Yep.
Uh,
That's because
because
his brother was, wasn't
they're like,
wasn't
your
quite the
brother never
same.
would have fallen for that.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely right. Like his
Yeah.
brother, if you think about it, didn't he get every single member of the team but Jotaro and like Avdol?
Abdul. Yeah. And Iggy.
And
But
this
yeah. Yeah.
he didn't get as many people this time around in the video game fight. And
Yeah.
it's true that the cheating was really not that difficult to figure out. Like Joseph was using Hermit Purple.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
that
it's
was it. That was the cheating.
yeah. And it's like it really, like, and to me that's barely cheating. It's like, he's Jotaro's just pretending to move his fingers. It's like, I don't know. Like that fight, with the younger Darby brother, Darby brother, it just isn't the same thing as the elder one.
And to be fair, like I think they knew that and they didn't try to make it be one. It was a breather episode before things got really dark.
Yep.
Like I said, like they
And
even say as much in the show, which is why I think they knew what they were doing. Like he
mhm.
points out, like, yeah, your brother was way more difficult than you.
And it's like
If
the fighting that was to come was very much the climax of the series, or going
yeah,
into it anyway.
it was
Like the
very
fight with
intense.
Cream. Oh,
Who
so
was
intense.
who was that? The one with the portal, to the underworld, that guy?
Yeah. The one who like could
Oh,
literally
that was a great fight.
that was a great
Very
fight.
satisfying to see Polnareff pull that out too.
Oh yeah, and it's like that was another thing where like the deaths were just 10 out of 10. As bad as it is to say. Like,
Yeah,
so
he
there's let me
nails the
see here.
moment.
So we were talking earlier, and I said that there was like sort of like, so 4 is a standalone sort of ending. It doesn't really mix well with the other ones, partially because of how Yoshikage Kira dies, partially how everyone kind of works together and succeeds. But volumes 1 and I'm sorry, not volumes. Uh,
Honestly, part 4 is very tonally different from the rest of the series, and I think it
mhm,
was an attempt after a really dark ending in part 3, honestly, or a really intense ending, I guess, in part 3. He wanted to mix it up and do like a lighter hearted JoJo, where,
yeah.
where sometimes you just want your villain to collect hands. That's the
So
light-hearted JoJo.
right. He kills everyone at least twice. So parts 1 and 6 are tonally connected, both with the sacrificial deaths of its main characters, as well as the sort of triumph of the villain, but it backfires on them in the end. 3 and 7 were similar, but a little bit more esoteric. You have the hero becoming like the full hero, but in Johnny's case, it was very explicit and very difficult and more of a long road. Whereas Jotaro, finally gets to punch the tar out of Dio, and that is so satisfying. But also because of how Dio, not that I'm saying that the philosophies of Funny Valentine and Dio are the same, but in the sense of both of them pull out their best card tricks, and it's a knockdown power fight between the two of them. Now, here's one that's probably the weirdest of the three. 2 and 5 are thematically connected. Not only do you have the villain achieving full power, even though Diavolo doesn't like change, he doesn't get like a last minute power up like most villains do, but he just sort of comes together and is himself. By the end of it, because of how Silver Chariot Requiem does it, but also it's because the hero uses all the tricks in their book and is able to um, defeat the villain all on their own in a suitably ironic way.
See, that's interesting because uh, I always looked at part 5, or at least I say always when this is really recently because part 5's ongoing right now. But
Yeah.
I looked at part 5 as a counterpart more to part 3 than anything, mostly in story structure, how it goes from fight to fight to fight, one right
Mm-hmm.
after the other, and leading up to this climactic confrontation with a villain who's been built up from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I wasn't really talking about thematically so much as structurally, and I'm still not convinced. I think that I I am not so sure it wasn't intentional, especially with the introduction of Polnareff. Makes me think that Araki may have known what he was doing there, but I can't prove that.
He may have known what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
Araki, it's hard to tell with Araki.
He
It really is.
does.
If I wasn't, what I mean is, I'm not quite sure if it was intentionally meant to parallel the structure of part 3, but the introduction of Polnareffs makes me suspect that it probably is to an extent.
I mean, if we're just talking structure, that's different. Because like structure to me is different than themes. Well, you could have themes that are like connected to structure and all that jazz. To me, there's your structure, there's your themes, and it all kind of has to come together like a batter, rather than having like how do I want to put it? The finale doesn't necessarily have to be the finale of the structure, because part 7, the finale is thematically is Johnny's full adoption into a hero and abandoning what he wants for the sake of the greater good. But the action climax is his all-out racing battle against Dio from another world, who has the world rather than those weird dinosaur powers.
Although the dinosaur power is friggin' incredible, and I
It is.
love it. So
It is.
let's just take a moment here and say that let's not underplay how cool that power is.
Oh yeah. Like he turns into a dinosaur and he can bite things to turn into dinosaurs. The guy he gets that power from is absolutely like it's absolutely hilarious how he dies. He basically forgets how his powers work and he loses them to Dio. And so he's been turning wild animals into dinosaurs, and they turn back into the wild animals they were and maul him. It's great.
Yeah, that's why. First off, yes, it is great. By the way, but I
Hmm.
look at part 5 and I look at part 3. That's why I said the other thing. I showed you before. I have this long theory that I don't want to. I want to present formally in a video, but I want to make sure that I could cite everything properly so that I'm not pulling
Right.
a case out of my ass because
I always
it's
like
a pretty in-depth theory, but that there's a difference between the main difference, or I shouldn't say main, but the reason that part 5
uh-huh.
feels different than part 3 in the sense that when people talk about part 3, how it makes more of an impact than 5, my theory is that they they have to build up your relationships with the main characters of part 5 through backstory. And
Uh-huh.
not only that, they connect you with these characters not through the character of Giorno, who was only introduced to them like in the middle of where they've known each other for a while now. They've known
Hmm.
Bucciarati for a while now, but Giorno is introduced to them when they already have this connection with Bucciarati.
Right.
Bucciarati is, in one sense, more of the main character even than Giorno is. If the one connecting point of all of the flashbacks is Bucciarati's involvement.
Hmm.
So Giorno is always an observer in the background, and the way that
Well, no, he participates a bit more
yes,
than I think you think, because he has several of his own
well,
fights,
what
and
Giorno does is he makes everybody do what he wants without them realizing that that's what they're doing.
yeah, okay.
Abacchio, believe it or not, Abacchio, who really didn't like Giorno, he was probably the closest to getting the real measure of Giorno's personality because he's the one
Hmm.
who saw through Giorno's act. You know,
Yeah.
even when Giorno was complimenting Abacchio's like, I know exactly what you're doing. You know, he's like, you're a bastard, Giorno, but fine, let's just roll with it. And he's
Yep.
not really wrong, but that's the thing. Giorno, though, doesn't make as much of an impression, is what I'm saying. It's not
Well,
so much that he doesn't work as a character. I think he does. I like Giorno. I think
right.
he's fine. There's no issue with him.
Right.
However, he does not make as much of an impression as a character. The character who makes the biggest impression and who is one of my favorite characters in JoJo's is Bucciarati.
Right.
And Bucciarati, when you go through the flashbacks of all of the characters, the
Uh-huh.
one central connecting point is Bucciarati. The leader of their gang is Bucciarati.
Well, like the thing about Bucciarati and Giorno is that they're deuterologists.
Deuteragonists?
Deuteragonists. Thank you very much. I was struggling with the word for quite some time. And even though, like, sure, we can say that, Bucciarati does more in the excuse me, in the show than Giorno, at least at first. It's still him and Giorno who, like, it's Giorno who makes the introduction. It's Giorno and him who does, it's Giorno who gives him the push he needs to finally start taking this whole thing seriously.
Yeah,
Um,
you're absolutely right about that. Giorno, like, I didn't mean to imply that Giorno wasn't having an effect on things, because he absolutely is. And again, I think what the Rocky's going for, and I think mostly successfully, by the way, but I think what he's going for is that everybody is kind of dancing to Giorno's tune, but he's making them think they're all doing it because they want to.
yeah,
But Bucciarati, in one sense, is the most self-aware of all of them, because
yeah,
Giorno kind of had no choice. He fights Bucciarati, and then he tells him, okay, I'm just going to be straight with you because I need you on my side if this is going to work. I want to take down the boss. Are you in?
yeah.
And he's the only one that he does that with, because he knows how important Bucciarati is for this to work. And that's the
hmm
thing, though. Giorno is a very smart person, and in that sense, he is kind of Joseph-like in that he's playing his cards very, very carefully.
Yeah.
Like, he can't come out too strong too soon, or he risks alienating everyone.
Right. And if
And
we did something like, Jotaro Kujo or something like that, it just wouldn't be the right effect.
Jotaro wouldn't be able to do this.
Yep.
Granted, Jotaro wouldn't want to.
Right. He'd do
But
it completely differently.
yeah, Jotaro actually would do something more like a John Wick sort of, single-handedly take down the mob type
And then
thing.
Ocean Man starts playing Ocean Man.
Yeah.
Take me
He
by
would
the
team
hand.
up him and, like, I don't know, him and Avdol, I feel like, would do it with him. Would just, because Avdol's the one who's all concerned with, like, just doing the right thing because it's right. I
Yep.
could see him and Avdol just, like, going in, getting really pissed, and then saying, so we're just gonna go in and take down the mob single-handedly.
Yep.
Whereas Giorno infiltrates.
Yes.
And that's where the Dio influence comes in as well. Giorno
yeah.
is not really an honest person, and he doesn't have an issue with that.
hmm
The best scene, easily so far, the best scene with Giorno in the anime is because he's in the background doing this, he doesn't leave as much of an impression. So when Giorno gets pissed, it's always very entertaining because you finally see a spark of life and you see a spark of passion and you see him really come into his own. So the fight with Chocolata was incredibly satisfying.
yeah.
The 7-page Muda scene, of course, was brilliantly animated, and much props to David Productions for doing that scene justice. But my favorite moment of it, honestly, was when he promises the guy that he's not going to touch him if he doesn't move. And then Giorno pounces on him after he, like, gives his cry of triumph. And then he's there, like, crying in front of him, going, you said you wouldn't touch me if I didn't move. And Giorno's just staring at him with this look of utter disgusting contempt. And he goes, oh, please, you thought you'd be that lucky, a piece of shit like you? And, like, that's where Giorno really stands out, and where he stands out from the other JoJos too. You can't really, another JoJo wouldn't have done that. And we know they wouldn't, because we get a very similar scene with Jotaro and Steely Dan, but there's a difference. Jotaro tells Steely Dan, I'm not going to hurt you, get away, and never touch us again. And he doesn't hurt Steely Dan until Steely Dan breaks the promise.
But Chocolata broke the promise too.
Chocolata was sort of trying to bend the rules.
It doesn't matter. That was the intention.
Yeah, but the way that Giorno phrases it, though, was different than Jotaro. The fact that he says, you think you'd be that lucky, it was more along the lines of, the impression I got was Giorno was going, yeah, you were never going to survive, dude. It wasn't going to end the way you wanted it to end. There was no way out for you.
I mean, yeah, but I think, so part
Giorno
of
would do that. He would lie. I think Giorno's the sort of guy who would lie through his teeth to a villain. You know, he has a different moral code.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, sure, to a point, he does have a bit of a different moral code. But the thing I'm talking about is that, so looking at the events, Rocky was pulling a similar scene as Steely Dan, but he was also playing it off and developing it. When you make that sort of thing, you know that I have a good one, Willie Ram.
By the way, I'm going to interject briefly and go my part 3, part 5 theory. More connections.
Yep.
Anyway, keep going.
But basically he's playing a similar trick as he did in part 3. When you make that sort of promise, it's like, I know that you're going to break it, that you're going to try and do something to break the promise. It's not so much that Giorno just said whatever. It's that even if the promise was made, the promise will be broken. And half of it was him also just trying to get closer.
The thing is, what made that scene really fun and cathartic too was that line. I think was my favorite part of the scene. Just seeing the look on Giorno's face as he said that. Because again, it's really, really nice to see Giorno get a moment where he's passionate about something and he's not holding his emotions in like he is a lot of the time. He's being very clear there how he feels, and he thinks this dude is a piece of shit. And it's wonderful. But anyway, going to that scene, it's just the way that I think that the way everybody talked about it, like with Steely Dan, when Steely Dan broke the promise, he knows he broke it. He immediately falls on the ground and goes like, okay, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Just forgive me again. And Jotaro's like, too late for that one, buddy. But Giorno doesn't even pretend. Like, he goes, hey, I technically didn't move. And Giorno's like, dude, you weren't going to get spared either way.
Yeah. But then again, it is a gangster story, not a not like the same sort of thing as Stardust Crusaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's far more heroic.
Part 5 is very dark. It's even darker. It's probably the dark up to this point. I don't know. I know that part 6 and 7 are very dark story. Can get very dark.
So, 8 is pretty dark too. There's how do I want to put it? It just gets darker. Part 1 is pretty dark. Part 2 is less dark. Part 3 is dark in places. Part 4 isn't dark, actually, at least in my opinion. Part 5 is grayish, more lighter side, honestly, compared to what happens in part 6, 7, and 8. Part 6 ends with an almost total party kill. Part 7, the dude has to give up the ultimate Joe bro for a victory that he'll actually try to almost reverse later on. Then we have in part 8, like there's a scene where a dude is tortured with the lives of his family, and then they stick a fish into him because they did some weird stand BS, and it makes sense in context. It does, I swear. Like they slice him up with a 10,000 yen bill or something like that. Um, it's like, to me, like there's still enough of a heroic element. Um, Diavolo is evil. He's as evil as Dio. He's possibly crazier than Dio, because Dio has moments of where he mellows out and he starts
So
actually thinking about what he's done.
Diavolo is clearly kind of a nutcase.
Oh yeah, but there's like scenes between Pucci and Dio, or even just Dio when he's by himself, or talking with one of his closer companions who he doesn't like hate. After part 1, like part 1 is just him going power mad. Where he's like, this body's still rebelling against me. It's Jonathan's spirit. I bet they're coming after me. And it's like, yeah, you bet.
Well, Dio is a very noble villain, almost in a weird way. Like
Yes.
he has a certain majesty to him. He even has a certain respect. Like he
Yeah.
respects Jonathan. He even respects Jotaro to an extent. Though
Oh
it's
yeah.
really Jonathan. Like he holds Jonathan in some esteem. Like like you said, he mentions like it's Jonathan's spirit. Like after their whole relationship with each other and their whole battle, it's like, Jonathan is worthy of being talked about with some level of reverence.
Mm-hmm.
And Jotaro, he respects Jotaro and Joseph in the sense that he's like, I'm gonna play particular care because they have Joestar blood. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there is definitely a majesty to Dio. He is an evil, evil bastard. He's a liar and he's a manipulator, and there is no question that he is. I don't want to say he's an honorable villain because I don't think that's true, but
No.
there's a certain nobility to him. Like he does recognize some rules in the sense of, he knows what it means to be a worthy opponent.
Right. Well, it's more of in the
I
sense of
think
how he
that's it.
fights people.
He will recognize a worthy opponent if they deserve it. He even does that with the one guy who's like his disciple. He
Yeah.
says, "No, you know what? You could be very useful to me. I'm not going to take your blood." Like
Yep.
he's willing to admit that somebody is, worthy of being talked about,
Yeah.
worthy of being paid attention to. Diavolo is not like that at all.
No, but Diavolo's like is like the guy who shows up like at the last second and ganks something. Um, like from a team. Like he would be a camper, he'd be a spy in Team Fortress 2, just because that's how he works. Um, not much else to say about him. Like it's like he lives in the shadows so much that he's basically invisible. With his powers that affect causality and all that jazz. It
You know,
just
I'm. Go ahead. You can
you know
finish.
it just makes him like a different style. If he fought like Dio, it wouldn't be as fun.
No. See, right now, I had meant to bring this up earlier, and then we got on a tangent, which is fine because I think all of our tangents have been pretty interesting today.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm watching, I'm going through the 1999 Hunter x Hunter, and I've been through the 2011, and I have lots and lots of thoughts on Hunter x Hunter. I think it represents some of the best shonen ever and also can be dreadfully boring. But one thing
Mm-hmm.
that I went through was the York New arc, which, for those who don't know anything about the show, we're introduced to a group of villains called the Phantom Troop, who
Uh-huh.
are led by a guy named Crollo Lucifer, which is a wonderful name, by the way. Uh,
Colonel Lucifer.
Crollo Lucifer. And they murder people, and there's this whole thing where one of the characters is trying to get revenge on them for massacring his tribe of people.
Yep.
And the reason that I bring this up is because I watched that video on the Assassin Squad of Jojo and how the anime did such a good job characterizing them and making
Hmm.
them feel like real people. And it made me think of the Phantom Troop. That was one of the first uh, pieces of praise I heard about Hunter x Hunter, is how well that Tagashi characterized the Phantom Troop, that he gave them relationships, that he had made them have hopes and dreams and get sad and
Hmm.
upset when people they knew died, you know. And the Assassin Squad of JoJo 5 really when I saw that video, it reminded me of that. Now, the Phantom Troop is better than the Assassins, though that's hardly fair because Hunter x Hunter takes an absurdly long time to tell its story.
Right.
And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure moves at something close to a breakneck pace. So
Yep.
it's hardly fair to really compare. I think David Productions actually deserves credit, and Araki too, for giving them as much characterization as he does. But
Oh yeah.
with that said, there's definitely, I wonder if there's some cross pollination of influence there, because the Nen system of Hunter x Hunter, you could really see he has taken a lot from the stands of Araki. And I've mentioned earlier how like all of Shonen basically took its inspiration from stands, from the quirks of My Hero Academia,
Hmm.
but I think the Nen system especially just feels like a really, really refined version of the stand system.
So I don't know. Like, to me, the stand system is just like the perfect version of like the puzzle fight, where everyone has a set amount of abilities with set rules. Now, then you set them in a room. Like you set, Steely Dan and Jotaro Kujo in a room. How does that play out? Steely Dan was Yellow Temperance, right? Or was he the Lovers?
Steely Dan, I can't remember the name of the stand, but he was the one. He sent something into Joseph's head,
Oh, the
and
Lovers.
every
Okay.
time he hurt himself was like every time he hurt himself, it hurt Joseph.
Yeah. Well, Steely Dan was kind of like a boss fight. Like everyone had to work together. So you had like in one of the weirdest sections of JoJo, where like Hierophant Green and Silver Chariot basically shrunk themselves down to fight that stand. Um, but like, let's say you get the guy who was the Yellow Temperance guy. He, had disguises and all that jazz, and like his stand had the ultimate defense of basically being an unstoppable blob. So then you put him in a room and you put Jotaro in a room, or rather, not really a room so much as a gondola and the Cairo Bay or whatever it was, and they fight it out. And then you see what happens, or you see what happens between Death 13 and Kakyoin, or something like whatever you like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like Dio versus Jotaro, and that's a power fight. So that's similar to how in like um uh My Hero Academia, where Deku fights the Yakuza boss, and the Yakuza boss has gathered together the powers of the his minions at hand, and he's literally ripping up the
overhaul.
overhaul. Thank you. He's
By the
ripping
way,
up.
quick
Mm,
quick plug here.
mm.
Oh, I'm so psyched for that.
Oh yeah, season 4 is going to be great. I don't even care. Like my favorite arc is the Love arc, with the gentleman villain. But just because it's small, it's personal, and it's just right. Because it's like a joke is like able to take on Deku. It's amazing. Uh,
The overhaul fight's gonna break everyone's hearts though.
oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, no, back to our regular scheduled programming.
So like the fight between Deku and Overhaul, or like the League of Villains versus the Redestro crew, it's all very very high stakes, but all their rules are there, and all the shonen tropes are there, and it all works together in a masterful way. but it wasn't really any different from stands. And even though stands are like probably the most famous version of that thing, like it's been going on since like Robot Wars or Godzilla or Dragon Ball Z, and even like Fist of the North Star, where like like they have all these kung fu fighters, and then there's some dude throwing dynamite, and he calls it a martial art. And it's a funny scene. Like it's clearly a joke, but it's still, like part of the formula.
Yeah, what Araki did that was different is at the time, I mean, it's nothing is entirely new. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just to make that clear, there's no such thing as a story idea or beat that's never been used before at all. But what
Yep.
Araki did that really revolutionized shonen, Dragon Ball, as influential as it is, and I'm not going to speak to its quality. I can't get into it. It's not my thing. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just
Right.
means that I'm not the audience for it. But what I will say is Dragon Ball did face a problem that I think everybody agrees is a problem of power creep. And
Yes.
Dragon Ball is the most infamous for having this problem.
So
That
much power creep.
the power creep got really, really bad. Araki
Oh
faced
yeah.
that issue. After part 2, Joseph had literally beaten an immortal god. So he
Yep.
was like, where could I go from here? And also, Hamon as a power system, there wasn't really much to it. It wasn't bad. In fact, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
But the problem with Hamon is that it's one power, and whoever has more power or uses it in a more clever way is going to win. This is
Yep.
when Araki came up with the stand system as a solution. The idea he had was that if everybody had different stands with different powers, then the
Mm-hmm.
fights would not be based so much on who was more powerful, but on which, the difficulty of a fight wouldn't be determined necessarily on pure power, but on whether or not your stand was a match for it.
Yep.
So, and the other idea too was then that's why everybody mentions that's why Jotaro can beat down Dio, but he could get wrecked by a rat in part 4.
Yep.
Which, yeah, I think that's unfair because I think he was being more careless because he knew Josuke was there, but whatever. Anyway,
I don't know. Like the thing where the rat starts ricocheting its bullets was pretty clever. Like you don't
that,
expect a
that was
rat
a
to think about
smart
that.
rat.
Yeah, it was a smart
That,
rat.
but
But
whatever. Anyway,
ballistic angles is like a
yeah.
little bit more than some rat who's shooting bullets at you. Um,
But
so
anyway,
someone
the,
points out here, JD Cohen, Togashi influenced by Araki, the psychic zones in
yes,
YYH. What's YYH? Yu Yu
Yu Yu
Hakusho.
Hakusho.
There we go. Based on stands. Hamon transformed almost to stands in part 2. You can see from Caesar's Power. Almost. Like
Absolutely.
Caesar's Power was still its own thing compared to um like compared to explicit stands. And people always like, well, what if a stand user fought a Hamon user? It's like, I think if stands are in the picture, like, we could reasonably say that all pillarmen wouldn't have a problem with stands unless it was something stupid and overpowered, like transforming your entire body into a bomb. Or it's like, with Hamon users, I'm pretty sure they would have had an answer if that was a thing at that time. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing with what I was getting at with what I was saying is that Araki is the guy more or less, and again, you can always point to, well, other people have done this. It's not an original
Mm-hmm.
idea. Yes, but more or less, he was the most influential person to really make it a major part of his story and to solve the power creep issue.
That is true, but he also
That
like
was
locked in
entire,
their
and
power.
it was incredibly influential. Now, the reason I brought up the Nen system of Hunter x Hunter is that
Mm,
early on, you're right, when you go, oh, the Nen system doesn't really seem that much like it, but you could see it evolving into more of that the more powerful that Nen users get. One
yep.
of the Nen users in the Chimera Ant arc has a power that brings you into like this alternate reality world where you can only escape if you touch him within 24 hours,
Yeah.
and Goen develops his stand into like a version of rock, paper, scissors, where whichever one he picks uses a different power with different, advantages and disadvantages. Like paper
Yeah,
is long range but weak, rock is super powerful, Killua develops an electric type of power.
yeah,
And the reason this works out very well, it turns the fights, as people who are fans of Hunter x Hunter will be quick to tell you, and I will give Hunter x Hunter its credit here and say, yeah, the Nen system is pretty fantastic.
oh yeah.
It honestly, he did do a good job there. I think he sets it up horribly. I thought Heaven's Arena was an awful arc, but as a
Eh.
as a whole, I like no, that's not totally true. The Gon Hisoka fight was great.
Well, like the thing about it is that he needed a way to examine it while keeping a certain amount of excitement. So it's a soft tournament arc combined with a powerful ability explanation that
I know.
ends with
I
a.
thought it was clumsy. I thought it was boring. I didn't like how low. I didn't feel like there were any stakes to it at all.
Well,
And I
no,
know that was
there
kind
were
of the
there
point.
was though, like the stakes weren't the fights though. The stakes was learning how to use their abilities.
But the
Like,
problem is, we only know that this is something they have to do after he does it.
well, let me drag it back a bit. So, let me explain where I'm coming from. So, there's a book series by a famous author who I'll probably have on this thing eventually, uh, when I get round to it. Where he basically has a super big reveal at the beginning of book 6 in his series. The problem is that to me it doesn't make any logical sense. Now he had his reasons, but the thing is that this was such a big reveal, it needed to be at the end of its own novel. Like heaven and earth had to move so that this reveal was either at the end of its novel or the subject of its own novel. And he says, "Well, I needed it to for various characters." But to me, like even though he needed it, if he needed it, this reveal, which changes so much of the perspectives of the story and is dropped because the woman the robot woman goes crazy for a bit, like it wasn't developed properly. There was no reason for her to do that then. It was arbitrary. It was an arbitrary in all the worst kind of ways. It literally made me put down the book. Um,
Now, which book was this again?
it was the last Terran Armor Corps book that's out.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
and it's very frustrating. I won't mention what it is because it's such an important thing. And it will change how you read all the other books. It is at the beginning of book 6, and it's literally just done. And I can't stand it. Like it's the wrong type of however he did it. And it's JD Cohen says Nen should have been set up earlier. Yep.
Yes, it should have.
It sort of
It's
is, but it's
well,
not.
it's
But the
also
thing,
because Tagashi doesn't plot at all, which is why Hunter x Hunter is absolutely stuffed with plot holes. But Hunter x Hunter, look,
is
I
it?
have such a love. It is. I'm not gonna go through. I had made a
No,
list.
but
I'm gonna write an article on it, but trust me
yeah,
on
or
this
make a
one.
video.
Or make a video. Yes, or make
Anyway,
a video on it. But
right.
look, I have a real love-hate relationship with Hunter x Hunter. I understand why it's a critical darling because honestly, I would say that the Chimera Ant arc is ludicrously long. The first like 2/3 of it are dreadfully boring,
Yeah.
and I really probably would have dropped it several times over if I wasn't told by everybody not to drop it. But I will say this. The climax of the Chimera Ant arc actually did live up to all the hype.
So
It's
yeah.
the climax of the Chimera Ant arc is unbelievable. What he accomplishes with the
Yeah,
characters,
I
with the fight.
personally prefer the
All that.
1999 anime. It was slower
Yeah.
paced, but it did a better job building the atmosphere. And also, I think Killua was better developed in the original, whereas Neutral Expression said a lot more than the kind of happy one he had in 2011.
My brother is in the background there saying that he prefers the 1999 anime to the original for various reasons.
Also, the opening and ending themes are much better.
Okay.
But what I
but
was,
that's neither here nor there with it. So let me rephrase though. If they didn't have the Tower of Heaven and they just went straight for Nen and then to whatever arc is after Tower of Heaven, I think it's York New.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic arc.
York New's great.
Yeah.
York New is great. The climax of Chimera Ant is great. Greed Island, not good.
I haven't.
I did
I
not like
never get
Greed
past.
Island at all.
I never finished past York New.
York New is fantastic. I
is.
do
It was good.
legitimately enjoy York New. It has this weird feel to it where it feels like it's building up to this climactic fight, but if you think back on it, there are like there's like one or two fights in the entirety of the York New City arc. They even tease you more than once with first the Zoldikes taking on Krollo, and then in a hilarious scene, they get a call from Illumi going, "All right, I'm done. You could stop now." And then they go, "Oh, all right, we're out of here. See you later." And then Krollo's like, "Wait, what just happened here?" And they go, "Oh,
Right.
we were hired to kill you by the heads of the mob, and he was hired to kill the heads of the mob, and he finished first, so you're safe."
Yep.
And that scene was hilarious.
But what I'm
But
trying to say is that if there was no Tower of Heaven, York New Arc wouldn't make any sense. Now, I haven't noticed a plot hole in this stuff that I've watched, and I'm very
was
like,
necessary for the ending
Yeah.
where we got Greed Island.
no.
Where we got the information for Greed Island. Other than that,
what did he say?
Yeah. He said that Heaven's Arena was necessary to set up the Greed Island stuff later on, too.
that was
Yeah.
about it.
I just think, I don't know, I didn't like how he
Chimera
executed
Ant
it
arc.
at
So,
all.
like, what I'm trying to say though is that
Really.
it's like the problem I had with the novel. If Richard Fox had spent the time, turned it into its own book, it would have been a mind-blowing, amazing 10 out of 10 scene. Not just she starts ranting in the middle of a church because she thinks the dude is somebody else, which she hasn't implied at all ever. Like, it's one of those things where it's like the Terran Armor Corps was such a perfect series up until that point. And then it's like and I just can't stand it. Like it's like it kind of makes me sick just because it feels like such a betrayal. And it's like yeah, I needed it to happen. But now hear me out here. We need it, even if it was a Heaven's Arena type of book, it needed to be written. It
I just did
absolutely
not like the way that he did it at all. I felt that arc
it needed to happen the way it happened.
It was
What?
boring, it was anticlimactic, and I guess that's my issue with Hunter x Hunter, isn't it, in a nutshell? Like, everybody can point out with good justification that the setup of Chimera Ant was needed, the setup of Heaven's Arena was needed.
Well,
That if you took
anticlimax
them
is
out,
its own flavor.
the story would be made worse, and there is justification for that. In fact, I would go as far to say as that's probably true. However, that's
hold on,
kind
though.
of
Heaven's Arena is still like the important foundational arc for this series.
Yeah, what I'm saying is honestly, you're probably right. That's necessary, but that's kind of my issue with Hunter x Hunter as a whole.
Yeah.
I just think like the pacing of it is so off. How he goes from arcs and to hit the credit of Hunter x Hunter and what makes Hunter x Hunter good, despite all of this, even great, is that Tagashi is a very competent writer and he pays off what he sets up.
Yes.
That's why the climax of the Chimera Ant, he has that ludicrously long setup that I criticized, but in all fairness to Tagashi and all credit to Tagashi, every bit of setup, everything that he built up for such a long time in the Chimera Ant, all of it came back to play in the climax. And
I'll be interested to
the character development that he does, it's just unbelievable how he develops Gon and Killua and the Chimera Ant King the battle with Netero and Meruem.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And it absolutely is. I've seen parts of that stuff, but it still needs the setup. Jojo, I
It
would be
needed it,
really
yeah.
interested to see how you handle the ending of part 5.
I'm very curious because I have seen fans the criticism that I've seen fans make, and it's a very undetailed criticism, which is why I know about it, is
Mhm.
that Golden Wind Requiem becomes too OP.
But there's so many interesting rules subtly put in, which is why I kind of wish we were doing this stream later on. But we can do it again where we can discuss it because
Let's do a
it's
part 5 overall retrospective because I think part 5
yeah.
is going to be a very interesting one to discuss. I
Oh
love
yeah.
part 5. I think it's great. I have enjoyed it thoroughly from start to finish. However, I had my whole theory earlier, and I am very curious to see how it stands up amongst the other JoJo's. And I am very curious to see whether the ending, I don't want to say ruins it, because nothing I've seen makes me think the ending is going to ruin the show.
So here's something.
Araki's too good for that, but now the ending will make it sit. How about that? Because the ending of part 3 raised it in my estimation. It
So
made me
here's the
think
thing about
better.
part 5. So I'm just going to cut you off there because we can go on
Go ahead.
forever about this. So here's the thing about part 5. Its ending is philosophically perfect.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know it's a strange thing to say, but when you're like, I'm a big total work kind of guy. I thought I like how Wagner did it. It's the stages, the music, the art, the costumes, everything is controlled. I believe that authors should control everything. I nearly got into a fight with my cover artist who ghosted me for like 6 months, but whatever. I guess we'll still pay the whole thing. Thank you for not charging me for all the little changes I had you do after you got it wrong. Fine. Sorry, I'm very frustrated about this, and it's hard for me to be very kind of kind to it because it's like a lot of personal tragedy happened. But the thing
Yeah.
is, I had a lot of personal tragedy happen. I'm sorry to hear that X happened, but that all happened to me, and I lost like a whole bunch more when it happened at the same time too. But I still carried on. I literally wrote the book during it. But whatever. Like it's one of those things that it's like if I think about it too hard, I'll kind of start spiraling, and I can't do that. What were we talking about? I'm pulling myself out of it. And
Part
that means
5.
yeah, part 5. So the ending of part 5, if you look at it, I can't even remember how I got on that tangent. Total work. There we go. If you look at it in totality, Diavolo stands as sort of the linchpin of the entire of that entire part, more than Giorno does. Partially because it's Diavolo's actions that are moving everything in the plot, and that while Giorno has a lot of personal drive to reach the top and become a gang star, he does have issues because he's not really the driver of the plot like Diavolo is. So Diavolo's ability is like, he can basically lock in whatever you're going to do for 10 seconds, and because he has clairvoyance, he can move about however he wants during that time. Basically it just works. Okay. um he has essentially power over causality. He removes 10 seconds of causality from a frame of time. And that's incredibly important when you look at Gold Experience Requiem. If you examine his philosophy of always needing to be in control, always needing to have that right angle, always needing to be safe, always needed to be removed from his consequences, Gold Experience Requiem is the perfect answer to it. And it's very important to say that Gold Experience Requiem isn't, if he let's say that he's fighting somebody else, he uses the arrow. Gold Experience Requiem would do something differently. The arrow, if you look at it the entire way, isn't about, and they mention this in the anime, but it's very quickly glossed over. Like it's not, it's one of those background things. The arrow grants whatever you want most in front of, like, not whatever you want most as in a concept like love. It's whatever you need to do the most at that time. Keep the arrow safe. Uh, become immortal and escape all the consequences of your actions forever, or whatever gold experience does.
Yeah,
I don't know how
it's
much you're
kind of weird.
spoiled on gold
Polnareff
experience.
gave this whole explanation on how it was supposed to cause you to, like, I don't know, control people's minds or
No.
something, or
I
who
mean, like,
knows?
he thinks he could if he had the willpower for it, but because he was all crippled up by Diavolo, he doesn't really have the fighting spirit like he used to. And it goes in like into, like, I haven't really heard many complaints about it, but I'm sure they're out there. But like once you become crippled in some way, like it does take a chunk out of whatever you are, and you have to kind of experience it to realize it. But it's a good thing to have in like stories and stuff like that. There's a reason why evil cripple is a thing in real life.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you
mean,
get the
outside of
whole
Christ, outside
300
of
thing.
Christ, yeah, the
You get the whole
300,
300 story.
yep, and a whole bunch of others. Um, a lot of it like evil eunuchs, that sort of thing. Uh,
Yes.
it just keeps going on. But point is, um, you could make an interesting argument that Diavolo is crippled psychologically, which is the reason why he does a whole bunch of the things he does. But that's outside the conversation for now.
I mean, it's pretty. They kind of come close, if not quite outright say they heavily imply that it's two souls in one body.
Uh-huh.
That, like, Doppio and Diavolo are literally two separate people who just happen to share the same body. So
Mhm.
it's it's not quite directly stated, so he leaves some room open of, hey, maybe this guy really is just crazy, but
Yeah.
it is heavily implied. Everything, even like the change of appearance, like the fact
Yep.
that it changes so drastically.
Well,
And
there's three theories. I don't know if you saw Ocean is
yes, I
video.
did actually.
I'm actually of the third category where King Crimson is actually Diavolo.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I didn't
Where
see that. I saw him do a psychological analysis of him as dissociative identity disorder. I
yes,
think that
well, he did a new
it's.
video just today, actually.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
Okay. Because I saw that video and it was pretty good, but it's also easy. Like, I probably could have written
yeah.
that, to be
I mean,
honest.
that one's easy. The next one's hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Sharing
both.
two souls in one body, though, that does make some sense.
Yep. And it's like if you look at it, where King Crimson only he only talks through King Crimson, he only does this and that, and otherwise his identity is separate from King Crimson only in Doppio. It's quite interesting. Um,
By the
uh,
way, loved
mm,
Trader's Requiem is a great OP, and I love the thing that they just did in the middle of it where King Crimson gives a little monologue in Italian, and then they
yep,
switch it up again and finish the song.
it was okay. So my
I
favorite
loved it.
my favorite one's still part four's Kira, where he blows it up and reverses everything they've done. It to me that's just the best. Though it
I've
goes like part four, part three, part five.
I
Uh,
think
'cause-
Trader's Requiem too is an underrated OP. People remember Fighting Gold because it was the first one, but Trader's Requiem, I don't know if it's necessarily a better song, but it fits the show really well.
Trader's Requiem is better than Fighting Gold, in my opinion. I honestly
I
feel
think
though
so.
that this season's OPs have been weak compared to the standard
I don't know.
and
I mean,
ED.
again, part three was not my favorite, and I
Part three's
think
OP
that
were
part
were
three had good
amazing.
OP. I think part three had good OPs, but I really loved the OPs of part five.
I
But
mean,
Trader's Requiem really grew on me. The more I listen to it, the more I realize how well it fits tonally with part
Nice.
5. The
Yeah.
really moody background, the lyrics, how everything. Also, that name is great, Traitor's Requiem.
Hmm.
That's such a great name.
I agree with you. Uh, we've been going on a while, and I'm starting to want to head out and like sleep. I haven't been sleeping well, so I just need to get me some
That's
rest.
probably a good idea anyway, because
Yep,
we've been going on a long time, and we even started late.
we're going on 2 hours, but that's okay. This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Anyway,
Honestly, if we were less tired, or if it were not as late, we probably could go for more, because there's a
oh, I
ton
can
to
go for
talk
more.
about.
I'm just
There
cutting it
is
off
so
now.
much to talk about with JoJo's. It's this
Yes.
massive generation-spanning epic adventure.
Yep.
But what is there not to talk about?
Yep. See you maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks next week.
It
Maybe
would
two
be.
weeks.
How about when part 5 ends? I don't
Sure
know
thing.
if that's going to be in a couple weeks, probably.
There's probably 1 or 2 episodes left. There's the episode where they try to figure out Silver Chariot Requiem, and then there'll be probably Gold Experience Requiem.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to end it with this. I have a theory, and this is purely a theory. I have no evidence of this, and I don't know if it will happen. But how they're
Uh-huh.
finally going to kill off Bucciarati. I do have a theory, because obviously he's been literally a dead man walking
Uh-huh.
since they first. I mean, literally
Yeah, no,
since they
literally.
first faced Emperor Crimson. I'm talking like the sub now, King Crimson. Uh, since they first faced King Crimson, he's been a walking corpse. So obviously he was marked for death from that moment.
oh,
And
so sorry, it'll be 3 episodes.
okay,
Yep.
and right now he's in Diavolo's body. So my prediction is this: he
Hmm.
swapped out with Diavolo's body. Doppio swapped into Bucciarati's body and now is dead. And
Hmm.
Diavolo is going to overpower Bucciarati, and that's how Bucciarati's going to die when he takes control of his body.
Yeah. You know what? Some of that is correct.
Ooh,
Yep.
some. I'm
Some.
interested. That was my guess. I'm like Doppio. I'm guessing Doppio is dead because I feel like that would really blow Diavolo over the top and make him more threatening and scarier.
I mean, Diavolo's already super scary. Like
He
if he
is.
if he
He's a
gets the
really
drop on you, you're
intimidating
dead.
villain. He's a
Yep.
really intimidating villain. He's a good villain, Diavolo.
Yep.
But yeah, killing off Doppio, who is, the only person Diavolo trusts, I feel like that
Hmm.
would drive him totally insane. So I think that's my guess. He swapped with Bucciarati. Bucciarati's body, however, is
Yeah.
actually dead. And Doppio does not have the willpower of Bucciarati to inhabit it.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
could I could believe that. It's
and
like
Diavolo somehow needs to kick Bucciarati out and take control of his body. Possibly, honestly, now that I'm thinking out loud, possibly Giorno is going to need to. Bucciarati's going to tell Giorno to kill him and not worry about him, even though he's stuck there. What possibly Bucciarati being the alternate personality may come into play,
yeah.
but I don't know. I'll see.
I'm
I'm
not sure.
curious now.
I can't honestly. I haven't read it in a very long while, so I can't really remember as well
I
as I used
mentioned
to.
to you on our Discord, I am a big Bucciarati fan. I'm a Bucciarati pusher.
Yeah.
I think he's an under the radar A tier Joe Bro, and I love his character. And next time that we talk about it, I'm gonna have to go into why I love Bucciarati so much too.
Oh yeah, and Bucciarati is just pretty amazing in general. Um, but it's
He's a
it's
he's very well written, and
yeah.
he's very likable, but he's written but in a subtle way. He's just really, really well realized.
Yes.
It,
And
it's
it's
one. It's probably my favorite. The thing that Araki's done this season is how he created the character of Bucciarati and set him up and wrote him from start to finish.
Yep. And it's genuinely good. Uh, and it's honestly like for me, part 6. So I loved parts 1, part 2, part 3. I was okay with parts 4 and 5. Really, I started to love JoJo again around part 6.
Oh yeah,
And part 7, like the ending of part 6 is to me like the best. Partially because the fights are uniformly good through part 6, and they're so wacky. Even though some of them don't make sense, or Araki just changes abilities, between sightings or whatever, it all works out. Though some of the abilities aren't actually different, they're just different usages of the same ability, like Diver Down.
I think I like part 5 more than you do. I will say from
Like I said,
from
it's
discussions, I would say I probably like a little bit more than you do because I've really been enjoying it, and I think it's steadily improved. And I enjoyed it from episode 1. Like
see,
I
I did.
already liked it when it started, and I think it's been getting better as it's gone along.
So for me,
So
a lot of the JoJo's take a while to really grow on me. I don't like part 4 until they revealed Kira. Part 5,
that pair of episodes was phenomenal.
yes. Oh, yes. For part 5, I was just okay with it until, ooh, what is it? I want to say, yeah, the reveal of King Crimson. Like usually, I truly like the part when they reveal the main villain. Um, like because like so going up to it, I found the Squadra Execution fights to be merely okay. Ghiaccio and who's the guy who was the guy before Ghiaccio?
I don't remember the names. Don't even.
That's no
I thought Grateful Dead was a good fight.
Grateful Dead was an amazing fight. That's like the scene where I'm like I actually started paying attention. But then
I mean, granted, the time because Iraqi really isn't consistent with time at all. How long they survive is entirely dictated by what he needs to happen in the plot.
yep,
Like Bucciarati, like they're holding this little thing of ice next to Bucciarati's head, and in other scenes, the ice is already mostly melted. And in
yep,
this one, like the Sex Pistols are going on about how like it's gonna melt any second now, and you just see it dripping, but it hasn't gotten any smaller for like 10 minutes.
yep.
Whatever. That's Iraqi. It's what he does.
Yep. But that's perfectly fine. It's pretty amazing anyway.
It's a great
Uh
fight,
oh yeah.
and it was very Bucciarati centric.
Very Bucciarati centric. Well. It's we could go on forever.
Yes,
So there's a chapter at the end of the Gold Experience Requiem that is interesting, and it colors some things from behind. But I'll leave that up to you. We'll see. I can't tell whether they'll give it its own episode or what. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us on this Tuesday. It's been a pleasure, even though I'm actually quite tired and itchy because sweat and cleaning things and job. But hey, you're here.
yeah.
You're with us.
This was probably too long
It's
anyway.
it's
But
not too long, but it's like one of
whatever.
those things. I've been distracted all day, and it's like, uh, you know, you know,
JoJo baby.
it's JoJo, baby. I can't wait for the part 6 anime. Low key, um, I kind of wish they kept up the quality of like part 1, but hey, that's okay. Part 1 and 2 were treasures. And you can always buy the DVDs and Blu-rays at different places. You know,
I love the artwork of Part 5. I think it looks great.
it mostly does, but like with part 4
Digi
and part
grows
5,
wrong.
eh, like I've also read the manga. The manga is art. Like there's certain times the anime just does it wrong, and I don't like it. Like when Luck has sided with Yoshikage Kira, like that's a moment of triumph. He gets like a full 2-page spread where he's flinging his arms back. He's the
You're
center
right
of
about
everything.
that. That moment probably should have made. I think that might be part of why I was kind of confused about it, because he's like, "Aha! You've revealed yourself. That's it." It's like the climactic moment, and then in the anime, he just goes. He just kind of says it,
Hmm.
and it's like
And
Josuke just overhears him say it.
and
It hits home much more if, and it also hits home much more that Hayato has kind of tricked him
yeah.
if he makes him give this grand announcement, because otherwise it just looks like Hayato got really lucky.
So the thing is, they tried for a look that said that he was like shouting it to the world. But the thing is that it's a personal triumph, not a triumphant triumph. And it's a weird difference, but it's incredibly subtle, and it matters all the world. But I know I'm gonna stop because we could just talk forever and ever 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 and ever. Anyway, Anthony, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and we'll see each other again at the end of part 5.
Sweet. Probably.